This video is an introduction to using the SALT materials and the programs for the Sacraments and RCIC. So a warm welcome to you all. Before we look specifically at the program structure and hands-on materials, I'd like to give you some background. The SALT approach is based on the hands-on teaching pedagogy developed by Maria Montessori and later by Sofia Cavalletti. Numerous studies, including my own doctoral work, confirm that children learn most effectively when their senses and natural ability to imagine and wonder are fully engaged. To do this, catechists and teachers need materials that are easily accessible, beautiful, and give them the tools they need to bring the lessons to life. In preparing children for the Sacraments and RCIC, we have designed programs that integrate Catholic doctrine with this pedagogy, fostering a sense of wonder and awe in the children, and creating a deep and personal learning experience. As they grow in their relationship with God, the hands-on materials and the visual experiences you will be creating will lay down memories for them that can be drawn on and returned to throughout their lives. In addition, I'd like to mention parents and carers. Preparation of children for the sacraments is often a time of return for parents who may not have been practicing their faith for many years, perhaps since they were instructed as children. In my experience, the hands-on nature of this approach captures their hearts and minds as well as the children's. I'd like to encourage you then to include the adults in this program, perhaps by having them seated with their children or gathered at the back or the perimeter of the room. You'll find that they also become as engaged and as curious about the materials as the children. How to unpack the materials still in their packaging. When you receive your materials, they'll be packaged like this. The first time you use dioramas, you will need to add Velcro dots on the stands and the box, the back of the box of the presentation, for the presentation backdrops. An examination of the contents, presentation guides and student workbooks. All the SALT resources come with accompanying guides that include instructions about how to give the presentation. They contain all the information needed for conducting a successful session. If you're teaching a sacramental program, each catechist's manual includes the presentations specifically tailored for that sacrament. Ideally, the session allows time for children to interact with the materials, an integral part of their experience. It creates time to ponder upon what they've seen and heard, both in the presentation and the subsequent I wonder questions. They may use the figures independently or with others and respond in many other ways, drawing or journaling, working with Play-Doh, tracing, considering related artworks, completing simple jigsaw puzzles, spending moments in the prayer space. These activities allow for differentiated learning, accommodating the needs of individual students as they ponder. Implementing parish sacramental programs. When the sacramental programs are conducted in parishes, the time allowance, the number of children requires an adjustment, particularly when it comes to pondering through choices. Now, the presentations are essential, just as are the I wonder questions. In any session, perhaps 2 or 3 presentations would be the norm. Each program is supported well by the Catechist's Manual, and there is a student workbook for each student which provides many opportunities to ponder, either during the session or at home. And it's important in these cases to emphasize to the students only to work on the pages in their student workbook after the relevant presentation has been conducted. They do tend to want to work ahead, and it's important to focus their attention appropriately. There are a number of take-home craft activities provided as well, and these can be freely photocopied and distributed just as needed. In addition to that, each sacrament has several charts that, once introduced, can be used independently by the children. Let's have a look at the Catechist's manual and how it unpacks. Every Catechist manual includes, at the beginning, an introduction to the SALT approach, giving you an overview. Then following that is the session plan suggestion. It's a suggestion because adaptation is sometimes needed, and it provides the sequence and the content of the lessons and itemizes the materials required. Each session has 2 or 3 elements. If the entire session runs for 1 hour and there are 3 elements, for example, each one of those elements can be allotted 20 minutes, let's say. Each parish needs to adapt these suggestions to suit its own needs, thinking of the availability of the catechist, the number of the students, the space available, the possibility of rotating activities. The session plan suggestion can be photocopied and used to help identify which elements will actually be used in each session, identifying the pathway through the manual for that parish. But at least 1, if not 2 elements from each session needs to be selected. Then the teacher's manual has the contents page, which simply lists the contents and the page on which each item can be found. The following section provides the actual teaching guide for each session in great detail. Following on from there, what kind of scenarios can we have in parishes? I've come up with 4 possibilities, and no doubt there are more, but let's consider them now, these 4 possibilities. 1 parish. Number of children may be small, relatively speaking, 25 or 30 children. The number of catechists available might be 1 or 2 or perhaps 3. The room available is 1 room, and the time, it's usually about the same everywhere, it's about an hour. In this case, what's involved in the session planning and implementation? Actually, some elements of this will occur in no matter which scenario we're in. So the first thing to do is to select the elements that are going to be used in each session. So you take the actual overview and you decide which elements you're going to use. We'll do 1 and 2, for example. It's actually quite likely in this kind of parish that all the elements can be addressed, but it's not absolutely essential to use all elements that are provided for each session. Another thing to consider is that the elements are generally presented in their order of essentiality. Then the next thing is to identify the student workbook activities that can be completed either on site or at home and that match the particular sessions. One thing to be careful with and is to ensure the students are aware which pages can be attempted at any given point, and to make it clear that they should only work up to those pages or on those pages once the presentation has been made. Then aim to present each element and follow it. In this particular parish, which you've got the 1 group of children, follow each presentation with some time for independent work, most likely including the student workbook as well as, for example, having a little time for children to be using the actual figurines, which is always a great thing to do. Now, parents can work alongside their child at this time. Then after the sessions the session has been completed or drawing to a close, bring the whole group together for a time of closure. Remind the children of which pages of the student workbook they can complete at home. And if available and desired, the students can be given a craft or a matching activity that they can complete at home. Now let's look at a second possibility, Parish 2. So in this case, each session, for example, is taking place in one place at one time and all the children are attending. You've got a large number of children, say between 40 to 80 children, is quite common. You will have a range of catechists available on that same day, 4 to 8 catechists, something like that. The room could be a large room or 2, 3 or 4 separate spaces that are provided in the parish or in the adjoining school often as well. The time allowance is usually the same, about an hour. How would the session structure go in this case? As mentioned for the first parish, the essential thing to do at the beginning then is to select the elements that are going to fit within the constraints of this large number of children who are going to rotate around activities in some way. The elements, as I said before, are presented in order of their essentiality, so the first one really does need to be addressed. And then the next step, same as for the other parish, first parish sample, identify the student workbook activities that can be completed on site or at home and ensure that the students are aware of not working ahead on things that they have not yet covered in a presentation. That is so important because they will be keen to do that and they need to be focused well. So time has to be put in before even beginning with the students, which student activities are going to be the ones that will be the focus in each session. Then the children have to be distributed into groups in some way, so groups of 20 for example, and then each catechist would be assigned one particular presentation. Then the session can unfold in a couple of different ways. For example, one catechist could present the key pivotal presentation, usually the first presentation suggested for that session, and all the children are there. After that one presentation, then the children are going to rotate for the remaining elements. So there are catechists that are presenting to more than one group as the numbers require, rotating around. And if possible, part of that rotational 20 minutes, for example, would be that they would have a little bit of time to do an interactive activity, allowing them to do a little bit of pondering, hopefully with their parents present with them. And most likely that's going to come straight from the student workbook. Many times it might be the I wonder questions are going to focus on because that's something the parent and the child can share together. Now, another scenario is when it's perfectly possible that the sessions can be rotated from the start. In other words, all the activities chosen or the presentations chosen will rotate. In this case, the rotation begins once the structure of that particular session has been clarified with the children and their parents. And then they rotate around as instructed. Then at the end, again, as always, bring the group together for a brief time of closure, which may involve a prayer together or what have you. But it's also the opportunity to remind the children which pages of the student workbook they can complete and that you can distribute the craft activity if that's something you're making available for them to take home. And this is a great step too, because taking things home and working on things at home is all about giving opportunities to the parents to interact with their children with these materials. And then a third scenario. This is when, for example, it's a parish with a large number of students, children coming for the sacrament, but they have decided to opt for having the presentations on different days of the week, and then the students are enrolled into that particular day, so Tuesday, Saturday and Sunday, for example. Again, it's likely that the number of children attending will be large, 40, 50, 60, 70 or 80 students. The number of catechists will be available to match that. It's actually a really good idea that no catechist is alone in those scenarios, that there's another catechist alongside him or her to help. So there's 2 catechists, I would say, ideally there for each of those days. The room might be the very same room being used each time, which facilitates the use of the materials. The time is likely again to be about an hour. What is the session structure in this case? Well, it's quite likely that most of the elements, or 3/4 of the elements, can be used in this setup, very much like as would happen with a smaller parish that has a smaller number of children. So possibly all the elements can be addressed, but that is not completely essential. Bear in mind that the elements are generally presented in their order of essentiality. A 4th possible scenario, parish 4. Parishes may have been implementing another program that would like to incorporate some of the sought presentations. In this case, it's a matter of simply slotting the chosen presentation into the appropriate session and using the appropriate session guide as presented in the teacher's manual. And then a word about using the charts and the matching activities. Each sacramental program includes a number of charts that the students can use independently. These usually require an introduction, a modelling by the catechist, and then they can continue or use that material independently. Then there are the craft activities, and these are provided in printed form so that you can photocopy and then distribute them as desired as take-home activities.